Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive back into the Golarion world, the world of Pathfinder role-playing game system? I got another interesting ancestry, one you don't really play, but we want to talk about today. The Serpentfolk, or as they're known in their own language, Sekmins. So we'll be diving into today. So join my hand, here your host, Antis Narvan Dracovin, as I lead you through the multiverse, through the traveling, through my plane shifting, my gate to Golarion once more, to the Darklands, to Sekmin, where we'll be meeting the Sekmins. Remember, tip your host here, like, subscribe, and bell. As we plane shift to Golarion once more. Yes, we've arrived in Golarion. Ooh, in the Darklands. Dangerous place here. Going to be learning about a species that was once dominant over all of Golarion. But don't take my word necessary for it. We want to dive into the source materials that talk about our good friends here, the Serpentfolk, or Sekmin, as they are called. So, what kind of sources, of course, am I talking about? Well, Into the Darklands from 1st edition is a very good source to go into. That's definitely one I would recommend if you're looking in that side of things. But we do have some 2nd edition information that does hit at them. Granted, I will note, for 2nd edition, we are split between getting into the core series and the revised and post. So do keep that in mind when we talk about all these here. There's a couple that are post here, and then there is one that is pre. Of course, yes, Bestiary or Monster Core is a really good place to go here for that one. The other that would be recommended is, of course, the book there. The original Bestiary 3 from... The original Bestiary 3 from 2nd edition has some information on some of them. And then the Monster Core updated number. And then from an adventure path, Heavy as the Crown dives into some information about them. Returning to the Darklands there. So those are your sources that I would recommend kind of going into. Going over stuff. I'll worry about that after we're done. Alright, who are these serpent people? These ancient people that once, well, I could say ruled Golarion. Or at very least have ruled the Darklands for as long as it is, and parts of the surface. They are a people that is a warm-blooded ancestry of serpent-headed reptilian humanoids. So they are warm-blooded. Serpentfolk is the common name for them, but Sekmins is their name in Akla, the main language that they have. They once had a very vast empire that was before the Age of Darkness, and it was defeat at the hands of the Aslanti Empire, which drove them back into the Darklands. And it was Earthfall which ended up saving them. The Aslanti, and in their attempt to defeat them and crush them, would have probably chased them into the Darklands and eventually driven them to extinction. But Earthfall happened, and it saved them. The main area of the Darklands they're in is, of course, Sekmina, where they're dominant, which is, well, named after them. It is the part of what their old empire once was, and they still have a strength of dominion in that area. But, again, it's been a long time, other species have come into that area. When we look at Sekmin today, they kind of go in 2 versions of them. Unfortunately, a number of them kind of, through magic and manipulation and situation, I would kind of say, changed, degenerated maybe in a little bit. But that's probably by the opinion of some of the more higher bloods within their species. The Zis. The Zis are probably your true Sekmin, as close to the originals as there was. The ones that have lost this are the Apoa. It means chaos made flesh. The Apoa tend to have a lot less of the cunning, intelligence, and magic of their ancestors, but mostly have physical changes, sometimes mutations which can help them. But the thing is, we'll talk about it. Both species are intrinsically connected because they are the same species. They're just different displays of that species. One side of that display sees themselves as superior to the other. Now, if we were to look at these individuals, they are sinuous humanoids with the heads and tails of snakes, weak and taloned hands and feet. Their bodies are covered in fine, elastic, but tough cut serpentine scales, often very colorful. They stand between 5 and 7 foot tall, are between 100 to 140 pounds. Apos are a lot more muscular, a little bit more hunched, and can weigh a little bit more than the Cis. Apo also tend to have mutations, which can take many forms. Extra limbs, heads, tails, fangs, additional features, horns, spine scales. There are a variety of Apo that are out there that show slightly different changes, adaptations. So that's where we get into others like what I'm showing here, the Coil Spy, which is technically more of a Zis, but have certain changing abilities which make them very good for infiltration. I'll talk a little bit about more of them in a minute, but you can see that there is some differences between them. All Sekmins have lightweight and hardy bones, keen senses, immunity to poison. They are not light sensitive like many of their neighbors in the Darklands, like Hungar. Their jaws are elastic to a point, so most could swallow about something the size of a monkey. They command their bodies to a great degree, speak language which would seem unpronounceable by the mouth, and easily adopt complex accents. They're innately skilled in disguising their true form. And as I said, there are the Coil Spies, those of the Coils of Yurdursis, their god, who are basically able to hide themselves a lot more, infiltrate, and oftentimes will go infiltrating the surface in mammalian civilizations, hiding to learn information. So, Coil Spies, there really might be Serpentfolk, Sekmin, infiltrating the surface. They exist. It's just, there aren't a lot of them. So, yeah. When we look to their history, it is one that we know something's about. We know that they are probably amongst the oldest sentient species in all of Golarion. The Age of Serpents, which was long before Serpentfall, was the height of their empire, where not only they controlled all the Darklands, they spanned into most of the continents on the surface. So basically they were core in the Darklands, but spread out to the surface in many areas, spanned into even some of the neighboring planetoids, the great beyond. They had this massive war. They even said to have ruled portions of the continent of Aslan before it was destroyed, northern Run, parts of Fistian. They subjugated lesser ancestors in the county. And there are ruins that depict cave-dwelling humans used as cattle or beasts of burdens. A number of societies and ancestries that these ancient Sekmin exterminated for pure pleasure is unknown. The battle that they had with those upon the surface is unknown. This is stuff lost to time. And even as their surface empire fell, so did their underground. They declined at first when an ice age decimated their population. It forced many of them to abandon their holdings, and it was during this time that the human empire of Aslant rose in stature. The Aslanti Empire grew, and effectively, the humans of that empire came into conflict with the second, which led to war. The first Linorm, the mighty Fafnir, claims to have allied with the second men during these ancient wars. The War of the Growing Aslanti led to the destruction of their civilization. And the turning point of all of this was the death of their god. Well, technically not the death of their god. I say death, but Yurdursis was decapitated. Not quite slain, but decapitated by the Aslanti hero, Sabbath. Sabbath took off the serpent's head. The serpent god is not dead. But this entire thing, having their god's head taken means that their god is not as strong as it was, and they could not resist the Aslandiathans. The war was lost, and they abandoned all their Serpentfolk, retreated to the Darklands, and fought against those that would come after them. And then it was Earthfall that saved them. Many of their leaders chose to enter a magical state of hibernation, hoping that they could retake their lost empire. So, there are some Sekmin from those old days that are still awakening, possibly. Granted, those are very low in number, and most Sekmin we have today, rather they are either Zis or Poth, are descended from those that remain and adapted. Now, I will note, this is all about changing things in the core, but the disinformation is basically when we changed core. There was an entire adventure path about Drow that existed in first edition. Guess what? They're dark elves. The Drow don't exist. It was really the Sekmin messing around with things. It kind of changed things. Wherever there was dark elves that were evil in the Darklands, they're now the same. So that was disinformation. The entire adventure was nothing that actually happened. It was an entire trick. Fabrications, tried to deceive perceptions, to hide the Serpentfolk. They tricked everybody. Take it what you want on that one, but we had to rewrite all that stuff because that stuff changed and we needed to revise the project. Alright. Let's talk a little bit about them as a group. Their ecology, their people. So, as I said, we do have the Zis, who have their intelligence and magical their ancestors. Many of them reside near the old capital of Serpentfolk, and report numbers in pretty low numbers. The Sekmin are a little bit more stronger, more venomous, physical tougher, outnumbered in general. But this doesn't mean we don't have connections between the two of them. The sheer fact is that, yes, the Zis want to return to the old empire. They want to reconquer things, come back out, resurrect Yidris, their decapitated god, find his, not only do they know where his body is, but reunite his head, his lost skull with his body to resurrect them. Their numbers are very, very small. So keep that in mind. They don't have a lot of numbers for that group at least. On the other hand, the Apo, they're a little different. They don't have the megalomania, the selfishness of their superiors, basically. They work in communities, hunt together, sleep together in pits. They have their mutations, Their combat prowess is the only thing that, they're judged by the Zis. Now, here's where things get a little bit difficult for Serpentfolk. Yes, Serpentfolk parent can give birth to a dozen young at once, but the gestation period of a Serpentfolk can last for up to a decade. It's a long gestation before they give birth to this large group. And the likelihood of one of those being a Zis is low. You can't tell if a child is going to be a Zis or an Apo, regardless of parentage. A Zis child is coveted and is just as likely to arrive from Apo parents as two Zises. And many larger colonies or groups will have people that try to identify magic from them. Again, Zis are still the rulers of them. I wouldn't call them superior because they're superior magically, but maybe not physically. Different type of superiority. They're superior in that group still, and basically in their society. So yes, if you give birth to one of them, then yeah, that child is going to be superior in a lot of ways. It's random. There are some Sekmin on the surface. I won't deny that also. You can find them, especially in very human remote jungles, islands, and caverns. There's a settlement located on Anabar Island in the southeastern tip of Vudra. They've conducted ominous ziggurats across the island for whatever they worship, whether that is, of course, the beheaded god Yggdrasil or something else. And in Vudra itself, they dwell in the near impenetrable canopy of the Crying Jungle. So a Sekmin will take about 50 years to mature. They rarely procreate more than twice in their life and can live up to 500 years. They're primarily carnivorous, with 4/5 of their diet being meat, supplemented by Darkland fruits. Each one typically eats once a month, gorging on 80 to 100 pounds of food and digesting for 24 to 48 hours. If food's plentiful, they can eat every 4 to 5 days. But they can also survive for 4 months without eating, and usually only procreate after gorging themselves. During the war with Aslanti, they basically developed the technique for the Zis to enter a incubation tank to take the form of a human so they can infiltrate human society. Despite the outward appearance, they would have the internal organs of Sekmin and can only breed with others in their kind. The fanatical Skemmins of the coils of Yggdrasil pursue the reincarnation of their souls into non-Sekmin bodies, allowing the perfect infiltration of people's societies. So, this is again the coils where we get the coil spy of finding different ways to infiltrate. There are some Aslanti accounts that talk of higher castes, which are considered even superior to the Zis standards, with toughness and magical capacity, poison the earth. They were never depicted, but heavily suggested in Sekmin art. Whether this is an existence driven extinct when Yggdrasil was beheaded, or maybe a dormant group of them, it's hard to say, but, there's legends of more beyond what we know. And again, the entire thing about this is, too, they have been the creation and changing of their species into 2 branches is because of them trying to bring about greaterness to them. It's genetic meddling. They want their thin blood of the Zis to be stronger. And unfortunately, a lot of Athos suffer from their experiments too. So that's why you get some of the more unusual versions of the Athos, who probably wouldn't be quite as mutated. Let's talk about their culture, because again, they are divided pretty heavily. It is definitely divided culturally between the Zis and the Apo, and how things are treated in a lot of their society. Certainly speaking, there is this connection between their all Sekmin. That's not a denial. But because of the superiority complex of the Zis, the aheadness of them, magocracy. The classic culture was a magocracy that spanned the nation, and the power of domination disguised to infiltrate and rule. The language known as Aklo does remain pretty strong throughout the Darklands. It's one of the more prominent spoken in the Darklands. They also can commonly speak Necrol and Aslanti. They would often use mind control to have basically slave caste, because they do live long and breed slow. For fighting, mining, to ensure their numbers never drop low. Because even the Apo breed slow. It doesn't matter if you're Zis or Apo, you breed slow. You grow slowly. They are a species that is a very long-lived, but slow-to-gain numbers species. They consider telepathy a mark of superiority in non-telepathic creatures as basically servants, slaves, or food. They are solitary creatures who seek to amass as much knowledge and as capable as possible. The Zis are. They tend to keep to themselves unless they need to be. They tend not to have love or attachment to others of any kind, including mates and children. And the mating pair will meet only briefly before splitting. And things below their species are just playthings. Eating for them is done alone, except for major holidays and events. Trespassing from home of another is considered enough reason for execution. And this does not apply to the Apo. They have a dim awareness that non-telepathic creatures are living in food, and colonies with too many Zis can become fractious, because they can betray and go against each other. But the Apo just want to hang out with each other, do what they do best, just live their lives. And yeah, you've got their superiors, the guys that are in charge, but we're just doing our lives. Now we'll talk a little bit about, finishing up here with a little bit about their religion. All of them basically bow to the beheaded god, Yggdrasil, their creator, and venerating him through varied methods. Some of them are very contradictory, fraught with heresies, cult of personality. It's an unfortunate thing that the exact worship of him is kind of hard to say. Each has their own way of doing it, and that kind of is a little mess for his religion. And they do still have these elaborate cities, sprawling architecture. There are some ruins that could be Sekmin, they might not be. Yeah. And again, some of them still have the abilities of their ancestors, some of them don't. That's the second bit. That's kind of where we're going to end today. I could probably dive a little bit more into Yggdrasil, but Yggdrasil is beheaded. Just writhing around in the Darklands in a small, basically, pocket plane of his own, connected to him. His serpent's gone, a lot of his power gone. It's just not there. He doesn't have his cat head. And the Sekmin still worship him, still keep his power strong. They seek his head. But again, so many more Apo exist than Zis. And the Apo don't care as much. I think that's a great way of saying it. They don't care as much. They have their own way of doing things, their own lives, and certainly speaking, are they going to be friendly to outsiders? Probably not. Again, that kind of feeling that anything that's not telepathic is, non-telepathic things are more food. It doesn't mean you couldn't negotiate with one, but it does mean that you're coming from a more difficult position of something that sees you as more food than a possible ally, friend, or someone that can help you out. And the megalomaniacal ways of the Zis who want to reconquer the world, rebuild their ancient empire, that see their superiority. That's why they search for that magic early on. To take these young Zis, bring them into the rest of them, and basically indoctrinate them into the ways of the Zis. The Zis remain with the Apo. They probably wouldn't have any of those problems, but being these kind of communal groups means that you're not really going to do that. And there's probably a Zis per Apo. You're not going to not have them. It's just, there might be one who's ready there to teach the next generation when they're finally born, to continue the issues. And you never know when's going to be born. It's just, there's so much mess with their people. And unfortunately, as long as the Zis are effectively the rulers of them, you're probably not going to have them change anyway to become more amenable to other species. They will be, unfortunately, until that happens, a threat. Granted, again, that generalized ability to be like, your food doesn't really help it. But that's the Sekmin, the Serpentfolk. An interesting group that, certainly speaking, I hope we'll see more of, because we did have the entire adventure that's kind of been retconned, and I would love to see a version of that adventure from first edition redone with second, or maybe even some other kind of adventure that's like a sequel to it, talking about how they were all disguised as these dark elves to trick everybody or something. To get more away from these rumors that kind of occur. We'll see. I've done that so many times. I hit the wrong button. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to end that there. I'm going to go off. I can tell you where to find my schedule. You can check me out live or over on YouTube. My schedule tells me when I'm live on Twitch, either doing gaming or hanging out or maybe doing tabletop recordings. Go check those out. That's over on my Discord. It's my main place to check it out. You can also check it out on my YouTube and discussion page. And I have it on other social media like Twitter/X. And when I get a blue sky, talking about that, I'll get one of these things. Make sure to check out things like Crimson Queen. We're getting to the end of it at the time of the recording of this. We are getting to the end of Crimson Queen. Check out that. Should be only an episode or 2 left. I'm going to be doing some more Pathfinder and more other role-playing games. I'll talk about them in the future. We're going to do them. Wednesdays at 8. Check out that one. Discussing Tabletop Saturdays at 6. Make sure to check that out. We talk about news of the week and more. Hey, we're doing all the core stuff and the remaster project came out. We talk about it. Remember to do the liking, subscribing, ringing the bell, and all that stuff over on YouTube. And various stuff over on Twitch. At least following over there. And hey, have any of you had any adventures with the Sekmin? And have you done the Darklands adventure from first edition that lived proud during the time period? Because I'm curious as to how you think, if you played that one, redoing it would be. How has, with the lore at least redone, because we've walked away from certain things, how is it redone? I'm curious if you think. There's a lot of questions with the remaster project that still haven't been answered. Hopefully in the future we will get answers to. You know, it's kind of like they do things at a rate. Anyway, I'm going to get going. Until the next time we chat or hang out, I bid you all a deep and wonderful farewell.